Greetings, welcome, and namaste. If you are joining me right now, you are here for the 20-minute Yin Reset that focuses, for the most part, it focuses specifically on hips, shoulders, and then I would just say a whole bunch of spinal love, okay? Lots of chances to open up, but just as much to close in, right? To maybe use a bit of that flexion to help assist in pushing a complete full exhalation out. Or just taking sort of a little time to curl up and be with yourself. Like most classes, you don't really need much to participate. I have my fancy yoga props because I'm in my studio space taping this. But if you have anything that can sort of serve as a stand-in, blocks, you know, we always say like bigger, sturdier books can be helpful. Even some that you can just kind of stack up to your liking. Bolsters are amazing, but if you don't have one on hand, you can usually sort of stack pillows up. Decorative pillows or stiffer pillows are the best. Blanket, any blanket you got laying around. I would say just be careful that it's not one, you know, that's too fleecy if you're on a mat, because you don't want to be slip sliding around, okay? If you have an eye pillow on hand, that would also be pretty cool. But if you would like to sort of get the same experience as you would with an eye pillow, you don't have one, you can always grab maybe a little face cloth and kind of roll that up and place it over the eyes. Just anything that you might need right now to be comfortable. My hope is that you're in a space that is safe and relatively quiet. But if you're in your body right now, you're listening to me, you're breathing, heart beating, you can do this. All right, let's get started. So like all my classes, we start with a check-in. This one will last approximately 3 minutes-ish. I always give the option to do this in seated or in lying down. You pick a posture for your check-in that feels best. I'm gonna be on my seat. I'm gonna cross the legs. Typically I would have something underneath my seat, but I don't really need it right now. Give yourself a chance to, if needed, you know, kind of take a couple deep breaths. You know, maybe a couple sighs on purpose. If you are just especially stiff or maybe even kind of nervy, you know, roll out the shoulders, shrug it out a little, maybe kind of wring out the wrists or squeeze fists and then open self and open, close the mouth. I don't know if with these earbuds you can hear that, but I store a lot of tension in my jaw, and it's like if I open it big time, there's, for me, it's an audible creaking. But that's something helpful to do before we get started. Eyes can be opened or closed for your check-in. Also, totally your call. All right, let's begin. So always starting the same way. One, you take a moment and you thank yourself for showing up to do this for yourself. Maybe even congratulate yourself. I'm here, right? I did it. The showing up can be the hardest part. And then just noticing how you feel in this moment. It's important that it's this moment, not any moments that led up to you taking this time, not what's gonna happen later today or tomorrow, this moment. And if not much comes up, you know, don't feel like you have to fill in the gaps. At least while you're in your space practicing, you don't need to do that. Scanning the body for any, I would call it more obvious tension, or the typical tension points. The jaw, the forehead, eyes, the neck, shoulders, hands, maybe the rib cage area, belly, the low back. Just sort of surrender those points, those places, those parts to gravity. Let them go for the next couple minutes. And remind yourself for the next couple minutes, at least during the check-in, but hopefully for the entire practice, you don't need to fix anything. You don't need to control, manage, get to the bottom of, give, do. You don't even need to be anybody. You just need to be here and notice things. Sounds, smell, taste, things you see, things you hear. Reminding yourself maybe silently, or maybe if you're by yourself out loud, I am here now. In a body, breathing. Take a second and notice your body breathing. And then for the last few moments of our check-in, you are invited to either open your awareness and notice whatever you notice, or to focus it on one of the sense doors, or your breath, or a physical sensation, or maybe you're kind of stuck in a loop, right? Something in the space that you're in, a word, a prayer, whatever it is. But you're just going to notice what you notice for the last few moments. Eyes can be closed or open. Go ahead and find those prayer hands. Bring them in close to the chest. And the shoulders stay drawn down away from the earlobes to the best of your ability. I'm inviting you here to set an intention for this little practice. Right? It might be short, but showing up, right? That's a mighty gesture. So you could inject a little extra meaning if you'd like. Remember, we all use different language. This can be setting an intention, or this can be planting a prayer, or this can be an affirmation you're working on. This can be a simple, right? I'm here, I'm choosing to just notice being here for the next 20. Big deep breath. And if they are closed, blink your eyes open. Drop those hands to the lap or closer to the knees. Now on purpose, shrug the shoulders out a little. All we're really doing here is finding a little bit of fluid movement to get an idea of what's sort of happening in the shoulders, if nothing else, where the shoulders are. You know what I mean? Up, down, back, forth, around a little bit. Check out the neck. I usually do this by just kind of releasing it side to side and circling the head around the neck and shoulders, but you can draw little circles with the nose if you want, a few in one direction, a few in the other. This is going to give you a sense of, hey, how's the neck feeling? Again, if nothing else, right, where the neck is. Maybe some yes and no here. All right, so you can soften a little extra here, maybe get a little slouchy. We are going to start in a supported child's pose, okay? So we are going to, like I said, we're going to close in a little bit, take a couple moments to really kind of come into ourselves physically and to ground down a little, and also in the process, open the back up, okay? So if you like, this blanket can go underneath your knees. That can be helpful. Some people like it underneath the ankles. Some people like it behind the knees. Some people need it. I want you to take whatever bolster or support you have, right? Even if it's a blanket, and roll it up. Sometimes they need that extra blanket on top, a little extra elevation. You might also find that coming into the supported child's pose, a block underneath the head is helpful. Some of us really don't want anything underneath us, right? That feels a little claustrophobic or suffocating, and that's understandable, right? And if that's you, well, don't put anything underneath you, okay? Supported child's pose means I've got some support underneath me. I'm gonna release, right, either cheek, right, on my face, to the bolster, maybe the chin, right? I'm gonna relax the shoulders and drape them over my support. And as you can see, my arms are just nice and settled right outside of my support. It's almost like I'm in bed and I'm just kind of straddling a body pillow. Your seat in your supported child's pose, in your child's pose in general, never needs to touch the heels, okay? This might be you. This might be you. That's perfectly fine, okay? Do you feel like you can breathe? Do things feel safe, supported? Then that's that. Again, if you don't want this underneath you, you don't need anything, right? Just move it out of the way. Maybe come into an extended child's pose. Maybe you want to curl up like a little rock. Make that decision here. And when you're ready, we're going to settle in for a couple minutes. The eyes can close down or not. That's your call. I want to notice all that extra space along my back. Like I said, a little extra spinal love. And that can sometimes just mean bringing some extra awareness to whatever the thing is. So in this case, I kind of am a little more aware of my spine, right? From the base of my skull all the way down to my tail. I start to soften places, right? Especially the places that I tend to hold on to crap, like my forehead, my eyes. If you tend to walk around maybe unconsciously clenching the jaw, right? Release the tongue from the roof of your mouth and make sure that your teeth aren't touching. Let that jaw hang. Let the belly soften, the pelvis drop down low. Staying connected to all the sensations. So if the knees, ankles, feet don't feel amazing right now, okay? Practicing yoga, we're doing our best maybe to work on not judging things like that. But noticing that something is uncomfortable, that's actually a good thing. And if it is uncomfortable, right, discomfort is normal, it's natural, it's okay. But we don't want to notice the discomfort. And after we've sort of identified it, then we kind of disconnect from that place. Keep that in mind, especially in yin classes, right? If my knees feel ouchy, or my ankles feel kind of crunchy, or maybe my neck just feels kind of wonky here. After I've identified those things, maybe I stay with that sensation. I notice that, like most things, it's temporary. Maybe I notice that it starts to sort of feel more intense, right? The feeling intensifies a bit. Maybe I just notice that loop where I start kind of judging all these things. What you don't want to do is dissociate from sensation, even if you stay with it for a split second so you can change it. Last 60 seconds here, okay? Do your best to notice your breath. It doesn't need to be any specific way. I like to, in this posture, I like to imagine that I'm inhaling, right? I'm inhaling through the nose unless I'm congested. But when I inhale, instead of that belly breath, it's like I inhale and I bring it all the way down to my low back, as low as I can take it, and I imagine the low back getting bigger like my belly would. And then on an exhale, my root sinks down a little more. And I inhale, it's almost like those little dimples, they separate a little. And then I sink down. You're welcome to try that. Let's on purpose take one big deep breath. Wiggle your fingers. Wiggle, wiggle. Maybe spread fingers like fists. So I want you to do this mindfully, safely, maybe slowly. But the steps that I take to come out of this is I start to lift the head to at least draw my gaze forward. Notice the neck. I crawl the hands in right in front of the knees. I push into the surface beneath me. I rise on up and I move these things out of the way. Okay, take the time you need to do that. And then from here, I'd like us to come down to prone, okay? So I drop to my elbows, I lengthen the legs out, and the belly comes down. And I usually, to be here, I just stack my forearms and I rest my head upon my forearms. Now sometimes this isn't all you need, but hopefully you've set your space up accordingly, so if you do need something, or if it would feel more comfortable for you, you can just grab for it. I've got a blanket under my ankles, right? That was kind of on accident, but it feels nice, right? Maybe you would need one for under the head, or maybe even the belly, right? Or the pelvis, if the low back's really yelling at you, maybe the knees. But you're gonna be here for about 60 seconds, and this is just sort of to take a moment to kind of reorient, to regroup before we come into the next yin posture. I believe in warming up. I believe in the step-by-step process, not just flailing around and hopping from one deep stretch to the next. Maybe this gives you an extra moment to catch up with the breath. You can stay where you are. I'm going to lift up to talk about the next thing. So we are going to come up from this, which can sometimes be a challenge or sometimes it just gets silly. But I lift by taking my hands and replacing my elbows, and then I start to lift the hips and draw the seat back and crawl the knees forward. If you need support under the knees like that blanket, right, go ahead. But I want us to spread fingers, shake out the head a little, check the neck, and I'd like us to take just a little bit of cat-cow. So when you're ready, drop your belly, lift your seat, and then lift your head, your chin, opening the chest, finding that stop point. And when you're ready, big arch, right? Tuck in the tail, chin to the chest. I'm really firming through the pads of my fingers. When you're ready, let's just keep taking a few more of these. I lift and lengthen, right? And then I close in. It's not a race. You'll also move sort of at your own speed. If one of these postures feels, I don't know, maybe a little more uncomfortable than the other, right? Back off a little, right? Know when to rein it in. Or maybe you just take it you make it a smaller movement than the other. Like for me today, cow pose, where I am right now, that feels kind of good, especially across the low back. So I don't mind sort of exaggerating this and maybe even finding a little bit of movement in it, right? But cat pose today, because of the shoulders, I don't know, it doesn't feel too hot. Just a couple more. And then after you take your couple more, I'm gonna come to my knees. If that doesn't feel good for you, you can come to your seat, but we're transitioning into supported puppy pose. So puppy pose, melting heart, whatever you wanna call it. 2 blocks is what I use. Oftentimes a blanket under my knees can feel nice, all right? So I'm just gonna show you that way. And now puppy pose is basically, it's like I'm in my cat pose, and then I decide I'm in cat pose, but I also want child's pose. And I try to cheat and take both. That's kind of the way I see it in my head. It's a really big shoulder stretch, and it can be quite a bit on the low back. You need to be safe here. If none of what I show you here works for you, I want you to take an unsupported child's pose, okay? And that is where you take those knees nice and wide, you sink the hips back to your stop point, right? And you would reach or extend those arms forward, and you would let the head drop down to the mat or the floor. If the head doesn't come down, you would maybe stack the forearms, and you would really just kind of let the chest, the front ribs, and the pelvis sink. If you want to play around here in puppy pose, I always start with blocks for support, okay? Actually, I'm going to move this back just a little bit more, okay? So what I do is I imagine, okay, this is kind of where I am for my cat-cow, okay? But like I said, I also want child's pose, okay, extended child's pose. So I take my hands flat upon the blocks, I keep my hips lifted, and I start to lower, right, chest and chin, until I make it down real close to the mat or the floor. Now notice my hips stay lifted for this, right? My hips don't sink back for puppy pose. So this is one way to do it. Some of us will come down this far, right? Your head may never come down. There's nothing wrong with that. You can also utilize that bolster here, right? We can still have our blocks framing it. But when I lower, oh, I've got this to catch me. Oh, that actually honestly feels better. And my chin rests on it. And I really just kind of let my armpits, my chest, my ribs just sink, all the while my hips stay lifted. And you really kind of have to play around with yin postures. Okay, everybody's body's different. I say this all the time. You might not know what your body needs until you play around. You explore some different modifications, adjustments, any kind of assistance or props that might feel good. You might need to take a little break and then release back down. Okay. Now, if you wanted to try this without any, again, if you found your sweet spot, you stay there. That's where I want you to be. But some people either just prefer no support, or that support bothers them. If puppy pose for you, it just maybe feels good, you can come down no support, where I have my hands again coming forward. They're pretty close to the front of the mat, and my hands are they're set up like they would be for down dog. Fingers are spread, right? Pointer fingers are parallel to each other. Keep my hips lifted and my knees under my hips. I just kind of sink back enough so that I can release my chin and my chest. Now you might have your toes tucked. I have the tops of my feet flat. Again, big stretch. The pads on my fingers are, I don't know, they're not really pressing down, but for the most part, they're engaged with the mat. We're breathing here, right? One more big breath. Now coming out of this, right, I wiggle fingers and I start to lift my head and shoulders. I draw the torso forward slightly, but enough to just step those hands in. I take my knees forward, and then maybe I take a nice, this time I'm going to exaggerate it, cat pose. So I'm going to imagine separating the shoulder blades, drawing my chin real close to my chest, tucking my tail between my legs, like I want to boot my belly button with it, pressing through those fingers. I breathe here. And then I just kind of release and soften. It's not even really cow pose. I just kind of let things droop down a little. I come back to my knees and I sit back. Again, you can always just come down to your seat or you can stand to the knees, whatever's best for your body. So we're going to end with that big old hip opener in supine Baddha Konasana. So you have your Supta Baddha Konasana, or you have just your supine butterfly. Now for this, you can throw in that back bend as well. If you have a bolster or something like it, you can place the bolster right along the length of your spine, okay? And you don't want to sit on it. You want that part to be right against the sacral area of the spine. But I'm not this, I'm this, right? And I would lean back, and it really is kind of the opposite of that supported child's pose, right? Now my chest is just so open, and I would step my legs in and I would butterfly the legs. Now these blocks, I moved them to this side because they can be really helpful. Maybe one side, maybe both, but they would come underneath the upper legs, as you can see. Then I would lay down here. Oh, and again, this is one way this can look, okay? I'm not as concerned that you have that back bend going on. Okay, that's just kind of, those are some extra bells and whistles that if you like it, right, it's your practice, you do it. I want you to get, right, the big hip opener. That's what I want. Now, if you need this blanket, I have it underneath my legs still. That was not on purpose, right? But if I was doing this and I was really getting into it, I wasn't offering you a class, it was just my own personal practice, I would lay down, I would take a moment, and I'm in, this is called supported supine. Legs are bent, I'm on my back, I kind of tuck the flesh of the shoulder blades in a little. Just take a deep breath. If I wanted an eye pillow, I'd maybe even start putting that over the eyes. I start to reorient, look around me like, oh look, I'm playing with my back, okay? I have an itch on my nose, I'm gonna itch it or scratch it. And maybe I just kind of lifted my hips a bit. Sometimes a little bit of extra wiggle or even kind of windshield wipering can feel good. I don't want the blocks, but if I did, I'd place them under. I bring the soles of the feet, or at least the knife edges of them, into touch. I pull the heels up as close to the groin area as possible. Again, tuck the flesh of the shoulder blades under. I release my knees to gravity. I let the arms just loosen. Right? My hands go limp and loose. It's like they're extensions that just don't matter. And breathe into the chest, front ribs. Nice, soft, open belly. Inhale, it gets bigger like a balloon. Exhale. There's that contraction. That let go, release down. Again, I'd inhale. My mouth would be closed here. And I would really think expansion, lifting, rising up, and then on an exhale, lowering, falling, smaller. We're going to take about 1 minute here. Sometimes I also like to put hands at the belly. There are days where hand at the heart or the chest and at the belly feel good. Sometimes I like to bring it to the hip creases, a little bit closer to the pelvis. And you don't have to have these big audible sighs on your exhalation, right? These can be smaller breaths. See if they can be smooth breaths. Maybe bigger, maybe longer breaths, maybe just longer exhalations. Once again, checking in with the body from the top of your head down to your toes. Noticing your body in space. Noticing how you feel. This time, if you want, right, on purpose, let's go ahead and find one word to describe how we feel physically right now. I feel softer. And maybe one word to describe how we feel emotionally. And this is kind of a physical word, but I feel lighter emotionally. There's no right or wrong answer to how are you feeling, ever. Noticing just a few more breath cycles. And always, always keep in mind, for any of these classes, if you find that sweet spot, right? If you just decide this is where I'm going to drift off into CPC town, you can always stay here longer. I'm taking one more full breath. Wiggling my fingers. Actually wiggling them against the hip creases. I'm going to bring these hands down to my knees, gather my legs up. I'm going to step the feet apart for a second, Again, if you want to stay in one of these transitional places for an extra moment, please do. I'm just going to windshield wiper once, side to side. You're welcome to release onto your side to fetal and come on up. Or I think it would feel better to hug the knees and cross ankles and come up to my seat. Again, move at a pace, right, that feels good, feels right for your body in these moments. Thanks for taking a little bit of time with me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I hope you appreciate you. And I mean that. I'm going to end with those prayer hands that I started with. The thumbs in close at the chest, shoulders, again, far away from my earlobes. The face falls for these fingers. I'm bowing. I am bowing to you. I would like you to bow to you. And namaste.